Batman Sword of Azrael, issue 1. I wish this was an original printing. However, what made me excited is I went over to Circle K the other day to pick up some stuff real quick, and I just happened to know, or not to know, but to see a comic book stand, and I was like, no freaking way! I have not seen comic books in a gas station since freaking 88, 89, maybe 1990. Now, the only downfalls back in the day when you would get the newsstand edition, it was the first printing. There was newsstand, and then as Diamond came along, there was the direct edition. But these, unfortunately, are reprints. So this is not the original issue 1. So I got to hunt that down. This is going to go to my kid. But I had to pick some up because I felt like I was 7, 8 years old again. It was so exciting. But with that said, at least we can go over the first appearance of Jean-Paul Valley Azrael. This miniseries is what kicked off the beginning of Nightfall. And this is called Vanishing Angels Sudden Death. This is Denny O'Neill's script, Joe Quesada doing the pencils, Kevin Nowlan doing the inks, Kevin Bruzenak doing the lettering, Lovern Kindzierski doing the colors, and then there's everyone else working on the book. And of course, Batman was created by Bill Finger with Bob Kane. And just this opening page, I love the threat, because we kind of get the idea that Azrael's kind of a threat from the cover, but when you open it up and you see this character, just that, I'm going to get you. Know that men call you liar. Know that men call you betrayer. Know that men call you defiler. Therefore, it is the duty of the angel Azrael to bring punishment. And I've always enjoyed Joe Quesada's artwork. My favorite, probably, I love his early work, but my favorite work that he did, and I know he had help, but Origin, back in what was the early 2000s, when they finally explained Wolverine's origin as a child growing up and kind of how he ended up in the wilderness and whatnot. If you haven't read Origin, I will eventually go over it. The books are harder to find now, and I'm really, reluctant to want to open them. And every time I go out to like thrift stores or something, I'm trying to find a collected trade of Origin. So with that said, anecdote aside, beautiful cover, great way to draw a reader in. And essentially what Azrael's doing is he's in Gotham at a mob boss's penthouse. The punishment of death by fiery sword. My words were fierce. My threat a promise. Yet there was no dread in his face. None of the panic I was accustomed to seeing at moments like this. I do not think so, Mr. Angel. And I just love how this mob boss just kind of has this shit-eating grin on his face. You dare threaten Azrael with a firearm. You think mere bullets can harm. So you see that this is not a mob boss to trifle with. I despised myself for the hot flash of satisfaction as I felt the blade tear and burn. His voice was a shriek. Again, my body shuddered as it was struck. My moans were lost in the sound of shattering glass and the shudder of the weapons. Sound that boomed from the streets below drew me toward the edge of the terrace. Drums, horns, whistles, the whinny of horses. These I heard. And I love that. The way that they decided to script Azrael's, it's very more kind of that, I hate to use this terminology, but more biblical type speaking, because obviously this is not biblical. You don't kill people for the sake of killing. So I guess you would call it more of a religious zealot. But the cadence of how he's speaking, if you guys understand what I'm trying to say. I have not had enough coffee yet, so y'all are going to have to kind of bear with me here. And then we see that there's a parade happening in downtown Gotham. And I just love the faux Dick Clark here. And then this chick, she's way too happy to be on the news. But then again, you watch anchors and whatnot and working in TV, it's not too far from the truth. Police estimate almost 1 million Gothamites are lining the streets for the annual Founders Day Parade. Mike, well, Sherry, the city loves a good time. And then Azrael breaks it. And remember, keep these microphones in your mind, because as Azrael busts through that window, mounts a horse, we see the microphones go up, and he escapes. So think of this, 1990, I don't even think they put the date on the reprint. I think it was 92, 93, around the time Nightfall happened. It kind of went into 94, I think. So we find out that this character, spoiler alerts, this is not the Azrael that we know, that we've grown up with, Jean Paul Valley. This is his father. Azrael, listen, here's what you must do. Abandon my body to be found by strangers. No! And then open the package I left you earlier. It contains what you need. I have filled. It's nuts. And then a little cheesy, but still hits that kind of like the mythological. There's the word I'm looking for. Father! And that just kind of makes me think of, I don't remember if it was in the comics, but the movie adaptation of Kick-Ass, where he's talking about his origin, and he's like, it was nothing dramatic, and you see him stand over his grave, over his mom's grave, and he's like, mother, or whatever it was. It's a trope, but it still has impact, because we see why Azrael eventually goes to the Order of Saint Dumas. And while that's happening, we finally go over to Bruce Wayne, and we find out, of course, the world's greatest detective. And I love the shots that they set for this, where we kind of get this semi-wide shot of Wayne Manor. Riots are not what you usually concern yourself with, Master Bruce. 14 people were injured, and 4 were killed, including Sherry Port. Ah, yes, the television personality. You knew her and liked her. Witnesses say that an angel dropping from the sky started the panic. Then in the mess that followed, the angel vanished. Vanishing Angels and Sudden Death. I retract my earlier statement. It is exactly the sort of thing you concern yourself with. And then they find the bulletproof vest that Azrael was wearing. We can see that these slugs are not your typical slugs. I mean, look at the way it just rips through. The cop found this in an alley a block away from the riot site. A bulletproof vest riddled with bullets. So we see why that mob boss had that grin on his face as he attacked Azrael. And as Bruce gets ready to go as Batman to find out what's going on, we then get this sort of this third person narration. And we're not sure if it's his father, if it's Jean Paul. Who is this? But it says, you opened the packet as your father directed. You, yourself. There was a number to call. Soon 2 men came to remove your father's body. Also, there was money, $40,000 in various currencies, and a letter directing you to fly to a small airfield in Switzerland. There you were met by a man who refused to answer your questions. You got into his vehicle and rode for nearly 6 hours through mountains. You debauched in a small village you had never heard of. You were puzzled and confused. Only 24 hours ago, you were a graduate student at Gotham University. You are now standing in a foreign land with no notion of why you were there. And we're introduced to this character. It says, the door to the chalet opened, and there I stood, me, Nomoz, your new teacher. Teacher of what? We do not have a formal name for what we call the system. What kind of system? Computer science? That's what I was studying at Gotham. Computers? No, computers. Heinrich. Ugh. What'd you do that for? You let him strike you like so. You strike him back? Well, no. Not even if he tells you that your father was a member of the secret organization that dates back to the 14th century. And that he killed 14 men, 2 women, and an 11-year-old child. Whap! That your father was a liar and a failure. Swack! Why are you doing this to me? To hurt you, to show you how weak you are, to tell you the truth, to prepare you to become Azrael. A little over the top, but this is kind of serendipitous, but I was just having a smoke break, and I was flicking through TikTok, and I happened upon, I don't know if this guy was a playwright or a novelist, but he was talking about how when you're writing a book or doing a screenplay, you don't want to make your dialogue natural, because when you're on the outside looking in, essentially, at 2 people having a regular conversation, and think about it, when we're talking, what do you call it, sort of face to face with somebody, and kind of how I'm talking to you guys, trying to put that into dialogue, it's cringy. And you just be like, oh God, hurry it up, because as the TikToker said, time flows differently as we're like what we're doing. We're having a dialogue compared to how like Alfred and Batman are talking. So if they were talking like we are, it would just be very much like, come on, get on with it. That's why when we see, for example, here, it's very much there's a problem to solve. We got to solve it. And that's why we're reading it. That's what the characters have to do. And that's exactly what it is. What we still don't know is who was the wounded man? A burglar? And why didn't Leha report him? Any success with the microscope? Yes, as I thought. Traces of Teflon. So you will pursue your investigation of Mr. Leha. I'm already pursuing it, Alfred. At this moment, there's a laser microphone aimed out the window of Wayne Enterprises. I'd hit the window of Leha's apartment. It will pick up vibrations of the glass and translate them into sounds, including speech. A voice-activated recorder will tape everything the mic picks up. And so we find out that this Leha guy, the mobster that we saw at the beginning of the book, knows of the Order of St. Dumas, and he's planning his revenge. Now, going back to what I was just talking about in terms of dialogue, see how tight and it flows, boom, 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 beats to figure out, okay, the problem that Batman and Alfred have to solve is who's the trigger man, why the trigger man did what he did. And then we get dialogue here. You're certain these warheads are small enough to fit inside a suitcase, Monsieur Renard? When we meet at the usual place in Lucero for the exchange, old Dumas will be in for a surprise, eh? And so we have to still kind of keep it natural because he's on the phone, but he's not like going, hey, how's the weather? How are you? And that's another thing that this TikToker said is he said, that character shouldn't even be saying, hello, how are you? We should just be getting into it. So here, we didn't get the full conversation. Hey, George, how you doing? Leha, how's the wife? We get to the important information. You certain these warheads are small enough. So we're getting what Batman is doing. So there, the dialogue is intertwining. Storytelling! What a concept. And it keeps you engaged. And then again, and you can still add little nuances to characters. So like this, what was his name again? Nomoz? We'll go with Nomoz. He's essentially just like a drill sergeant breaking down Jean-Paul Valley to make him the new Azrael. What is that? Symbol of what you will devote your life to and your death if need be. And that's what I mean by nuances. You can see how in Jean-Paul's mannerisms, how he's very meek at the moment. But Nomoz here, he's kind of the old wise teacher. And a little jaded, but he kind of has a so you say he's a little off his rocker. But still, even though we kind of get the nuance and cadence of each character, it's still tight dialogue. They're not saying, oh, excuse me for a minute, I need to go back to the bathroom. Later, no, we're boom, right into it, learning what the Order of St. Dumas is. It is the sigil of the ancient Order of St. Dumas. If that clumsy oaf of a father of yours did his job properly, he's been implanting certain suggestions in you from early childhood. You may remember them as dreams. It is time to make you aware of them. And when I am, then what? Now, setting dialogue aside, in terms of panel layout, and that's why I've said in other reviews where certain comics feel like they're just writing for like Netflix, for example, where the paneling feels like a shot list and the dialogue feels like TV. Here, this feels much like a book. Same with here, how even the inker, and I'm sure the penciler, Joe Quesada, was thinking about this, where Jean-Paul Valley is essentially having an existential crisis in his whole life. And so as he's talking to Nomoz, see how his face is just that shrouded in black. And all we see is his glasses. And same here. And then he goes, and when I am, then what? I love is how Nomoz is showing the sigil, and we get it reflected in his eye. Just kind of shows this duality nature. And this because comics are a visual medium. So even though the dialogue is awesome, you need the panels to represent what the dialogue is trying to enforce. And so, of course, we get moments Batman's doing his detective bit. But what really hits the hardest is when Azrael is transformed. Because what happens, again, dialogue intertwining. Bruce is rescouring the alley where they found the Azrael armor. And he goes, they said that there was a sword, but no one's been able to find it. Cellar door locked, but the padlock's clean, been used recently, so it could have been opened when the fallen angel ran past it. Never hurts to have a look, nor to practice my lock picking. Bingo, got it on the first try. See dialogue, snappy, boom, boom, boom. Not, darn it. I know this. I know this. Boom. It's there. And he finds the sword with the insignia. And then, great panel transitioning. It's time. Today, this minute, you are initiated into the system. Begin by gazing into the sigil. Know that you can relax. And when you do, you will know that you already know all that you must know. To allow the angel to possess you, transform you, become thee and he. And I just love how instead of showing irregular panels of just like him doing like a Dr. Jekyll, like we get this mind just Jedi mind screw right there. And then how it just progresses with the repeating of the T. You just, as you're reading it, you feel that intensity building up. And it's just a great way. And then what I love is how, okay, Jean Paul Valley kind of can understand how to fight now. How did I do that? How did I know to do that? You have been pairing since infancy, but you did not realize this. The knowledge was below the surface of your soul. It was the way of the system. Your father did his work well. And then we kind of see how he doesn't look so much like a pansy anymore. He kind of has more of a confident look. Not sure, but he knows something's different. He goes, I've become a tough guy. No, not yet. You have skills and knowledge, but your body is soft and flabby. The mountains will cure that. And again, paneling. I love how we go from inside to the characters to outside to show his training grounds. Now, this is interesting. If you guys can kind of help me canonically understand this. So we then cut to the Batcave. Bruce has the sword. And he goes, once before, a madman's bullet shattered her spine. She was Barbara Gordon. Now she called herself Oracle. She sits in a vast repository of information. And what she doesn't know, she finds out and shares. You don't give me the easy ones, do you? I believe she's about to share something now. It took me half a day to track down the symbol. So very much you can see this is like the early workings of Oracle. Now remember, and for those of you that haven't following, we've gone over the two first appearances of Oracle in Suicide Squad. And apparently there for a while, she was working with Amanda Waller with Task Force X. So can you guys kind of recommend how we go from Suicide Squad to her hooking up with Batman again after being Batgirl for so long? It's just interesting. I kind of see it, but I'm not sure where to go from where I have. So if you guys could help me out with that, I'd appreciate it. Barbara gives them the 411 on Azrael. And of course, Bruce Wayne being Bruce Wayne, he is able to find the compound in Switzerland. But before he can confront the Order of St. Dumas, remember, Leha has his own machinations. And the book ends on a cliffhanger. So guys, there is a lot. This is why I love Denny O'Neil. If you think about it, like close your eyes, think about it. When you think of the new Teen Titans, who's the writer that comes to mind, or like, should I say the creative team? Marv Wolfman and George Perez. When you think of some of the best X-Men stories, who do you think? Chris Claremont, John Byrne, Dave Cockrum, and so forth with the artist, but Chris Claremont. When I think of Batman, yes, artists have come and go, but when I think of some of the best Batman stories that I've read, like early ones, I think immediately Denny O'Neil and Neil Adams. Granted, this is Joe Quesada, and he does great work too, but it was kind of, if you think about it, and you go back and look at the history, aside from Bill Finger and Bob Kane, it was Denny O'Neil and Neil Adams that finally took Batman and the Joker out of the goofiness of the Silver Age and brought them into what we essentially know today. And Denny O'Neil still has the chops doing the Sword of Azrael. And I absolutely enjoyed it. Nightfall was one of the first Batman stories I ever read as a kid. And so I finally went back and read The Vengeance of Bane, how we were introduced to Bane leading up to Nightfall. So I need to get the rest of this series so that we can continue Jean Paul Valley's journey. So if you've enjoyed what you've seen, please first and foremost support your local comic shop or wherever it is to get your action figures and comics, and pick up this series either in the individual floppies or collected trade. If you've enjoyed this review, really would appreciate it if you take a moment to like, share, and subscribe. Helps the channel more than you could possibly know. And if you don't mind hitting that fancy little St. Dumas bell, next subscribe. That way I can upload content. You guys get notified. Come to the channel, and I love talking with you on hearing your thoughts and feedback down in the comments or the socials, which I'll make sure the links down in the description. So with all that said, hope you all continue to have an absolutely amazing day reading, and happy hunting, everyone.